Something quietly shifted inside the Detroit Lions offense, and if you've been paying close attention, you can already feel that this move is about more than just adding depth. It's about reshaping how this team wants to attack moving forward. The arrival of Tyler Conklin isn't just another roster transaction, it's a calculated addition that could have real impact, especially when you start connecting all the details behind it. Conklin comes into Detroit after a very specific kind of journey. Between 2021 and 2024, he put together the most productive stretch of his NFL career, recording 61, 58, 61, and 51 receptions across those seasons while playing for the Minnesota Vikings and New York Jets. That level of consistency at the tight end position doesn't just happen by accident. It shows durability, trust from quarterbacks, and an ability to stay involved in different offensive systems. But then came last season with the Los Angeles Chargers, and everything changed. His production dropped dramatically to just 7 receptions. Not because he suddenly lost ability, but because his role shifted. He was used more as a reserve option and blocker, which naturally limited his opportunities in the passing game. And now, stepping into Detroit, he's making it very clear. He believes that version of him, the productive pass-catching tight end, is still very much alive. And that's where things get interesting for Lions fans. Conklin himself pointed directly at the opportunity in front of him. He talked about joining a room with Sam Laporta and Brock Wright, calling them really good football players, and emphasizing that this is an offense that values tight ends. That's not just talk. When you look at how Detroit has built its offense, there's a clear appreciation for versatility and multiple tight end sets. And here's another layer that shouldn't be overlooked: his connection with offensive coordinator Drew Petzing. The two crossed paths back in Minnesota when Petzing was working with quarterbacks and wide receivers. That familiarity matters. It means there's already a level of understanding, a baseline of trust, and potentially a clearer vision of how Conklin can be used. Now add context to the current situation in Detroit. Laporta was the team's second leading receiver last season before a back injury on November 9th ended his year. That's a massive loss in the middle of the offense. Then Brock Wright stepped in, only to suffer a trachea injury that forced him to miss the final 6 games. Suddenly, what looked like a strong and stable tight end group became a question mark, and that's exactly where Conklin fits in. He's not just depth, he's insurance, experience, and flexibility all rolled into one. Across his career, he's played in 127 games with 69 starts and has totaled 270 receptions. That's a proven track record. That's a player who understands how to find space, how to contribute in different roles, and how to stay ready when his number is called. But what really stands out is his mindset. He's not walking into Detroit expecting anything to be handed to him. He openly said he doesn't know what his role will be. Instead, he's focused on competing, being the best version of himself, and helping the team in whatever way is needed. That kind of approach fits perfectly with what this Lions team has been building culturally. And if you zoom out for a second, you can start to see the bigger picture forming. With Petzing's offense expected to be multiple and creative, there's a real possibility we see more 2 and even 3 tight end sets. That changes how defenses have to line up. That creates mismatches. That opens up both the run game and the passing attack in ways that aren't always obvious at first glance. So this isn't just about one signing. It's about what this signing allows Detroit to do schematically. It's about having options, especially after dealing with injuries at the position. And it's about bringing in a player who's motivated to prove that last season was the exception, not the rule. The question now becomes how all these pieces come together once everyone is healthy and on the field at the same time. Because if Conklin does return to his previous level of production, and if Laporta comes back strong, and if Wright continues to develop, this tight end group could quietly become one of the most versatile units on the entire roster. So looking at all of this, do you see Tyler Conklin as just a depth addition, or could he end up playing a much bigger role in this Lions offense than people expect? And when you really start to project how this could unfold on the field, that's where the move becomes even more intriguing, because it's not just about replacing production or covering for injuries, it's about expanding the identity of the offense in ways that weren't fully available before. Think about the flexibility this gives Drew Petzing. When you have a tight end like Sam Laporta, who already proved he can be a major receiving threat, defenses naturally adjust. They account for him, they shift coverage, they try to limit his impact. But now with Tyler Conklin in the mix, someone who has already shown he can handle a high volume of targets, you're forcing defenses into tougher decisions. Do they double Laporta and leave Conklin with favorable matchups? Do they stay balanced and risk both tight ends finding space? And that's without even factoring in Brock Wright, who has already proven he can step up when needed. This isn't just depth anymore. This is a layered unit that can attack in multiple ways depending on the situation, and let's not ignore the physical element of it either. Conklin's experience as a blocker, especially from his most recent role, adds another dimension. If Detroit leans into heavier formations with 2 or 3 tight ends, they can disguise intentions more effectively. A formation that looks like a run can quickly turn into a passing play, and vice versa. That kind of unpredictability is exactly what makes an offense difficult to defend over the course of a full game. What stands out even more is how self-aware Conklin has been about his situation. He didn't shy away from what happened last season. He acknowledged that things didn't go the way anyone expected in Los Angeles, but he also made it clear that one situation doesn't define a player's ability. That mindset matters, especially in a locker room that values resilience and competition. And if you connect that to the broader culture being built in Detroit, it starts to make even more sense. This is a team that values players who are willing to earn their role, adapt, and contribute in whatever way is needed. Conklin fits that mold. He's not coming in with demands. He's coming in with urgency. There's also something to be said about the home factor. Returning to Michigan, where he played high school football and built the foundation of his athletic career, adds a layer of motivation that you can't always measure. Players often talk about playing with a different kind of energy when they're back in familiar territory, and Conklin himself mentioned how meaningful this opportunity is for him. Now, if everything clicks, this could quietly become one of those moves that looks small at first, but ends up having a ripple effect across the entire offense. Not necessarily because Conklin becomes the primary target, but because his presence allows everyone else to operate more freely, and that's where the real value might be. Because if Laporta returns healthy and continues his trajectory, if Wright remains a reliable option, and if Conklin finds his rhythm again in the passing game, Detroit suddenly has a tight end trio that can dictate matchups instead of reacting to them. That's a subtle but powerful shift. It's also worth remembering that Conklin has already handled a significant workload before. 170 receptions over 3 seasons with the New York Jets isn't a small number. That kind of experience doesn't disappear. It stays with you, and in the right system, it can resurface quickly. So now you're looking at an offense that could become even more multiple, more creative, and harder to predict. And in a league where adaptability often separates good teams from great ones, that matters more than ever. The real question is how quickly this chemistry develops, and how the coaching staff chooses to deploy these pieces once the season gets underway. Because the potential is clearly there. It's just a matter of execution. One more thing that can't be ignored here is how this move might influence the rhythm of the entire offense once the season actually begins, because when you add a player like Tyler Conklin into a system that already has defined roles, there's always that adjustment period, but there's also the opportunity for something unexpected to emerge. What makes this situation different is that Conklin isn't coming in as an unknown piece. The coaching staff, especially Drew Petzing, already has a background with him. That reduces the learning curve. It increases the chances that we see him involved earlier than people might anticipate, even if it starts in specific packages or situational plays. And that's where Lions fans should really pay attention, not just to snap counts, but to when he's on the field. Third downs, red zone situations, play action sets. Those are the moments where a veteran tight end with reliable hands and awareness can make the biggest difference. At the same time, this doesn't take anything away from Sam Laporta or Brock Wright. If anything, it could elevate both of them. Laporta won't have to carry the same level of defensive attention on every single play, especially coming off an injury. Wright won't be forced into an expanded role out of necessity like he was before his own setback. Instead, the workload can be distributed more naturally, which could lead to more efficiency across the board. And when you think about a long NFL season, that kind of balance is critical. It's not just about who starts, it's about who's available and effective deep into the schedule. Injuries already showed how quickly things can change for this group, and adding a proven veteran is a direct response to that reality. There's also a subtle competitive edge being introduced here. Conklin made it clear he's coming in to compete, not just participate. That kind of internal competition tends to raise the level of the entire room. Every rep in practice matters more. Every opportunity in a game carries more weight. And over time, that can sharpen execution in ways that don't always show up in headlines, but absolutely show up on the field. So now you're looking at a tight end group that has depth, experience, versatility, and motivation, all at the same time. And in an offense that already aims to be explosive, that combination could unlock new layers that weren't fully accessible before. The interesting part is that none of this guarantees a specific outcome. Conklin could end up being a key contributor in the passing game again, or he could play a more balanced role that doesn't always show up in the stat sheet but still impacts winning. Either way, the intent behind the move is clear. Give the offense more tools, more flexibility, and more ways to adapt depending on the situation. And sometimes, those are the moves that matter the most. Not the ones that dominate headlines immediately, but the ones that quietly strengthen the foundation of the team. So as you look ahead to how this offense might evolve, keep this in mind. This addition wasn't made in isolation. It was made with a vision of how all these pieces can fit together. And the more you break it down, the more you realize this situation might not fully reveal itself until the games actually start stacking up, because what Detroit has now is optionality. And in today's NFL, that's one of the most dangerous things an offense can have. With Tyler Conklin stepping into this environment, the Lions aren't locked into a single identity at the tight end position anymore. They can shift week to week, even drive to drive, depending on what the defense is giving them. And that kind of adaptability can quietly tilt matchups over the course of a game without fans even noticing it in real time. You might see a stretch where Sam Laporta is the focal point, drawing attention and opening space underneath. Then suddenly a sequence where Conklin becomes the safety valve, working the middle of the field, extending drives, keeping the offense on schedule. And in between all that, Brock Wright continues doing the small but critical things that keep everything functioning. That rotation, that balance, it wears defenses down. And here's something that often gets overlooked. Consistency isn't just about one player putting up big numbers. Sometimes it's about having multiple players capable of stepping into the spotlight depending on the situation. That's how you sustain offensive production over a full season, especially when injuries, adjustments, and game plans start to pile up. What Detroit is building here feels intentional. It's not just about having talent, it's about having interchangeable pieces that can execute different roles without the offense losing its rhythm. Conklin's experience, especially coming from systems where he's had to adapt, fits directly into that philosophy. You can also sense a quiet urgency in how he's approaching this opportunity. He knows what his peak production looks like, he's lived it, and after a season where his role was limited, there's a clear motivation to show that he can still be that player again when given the chance. That kind of internal drive can be a difference maker, especially in a locker room that feeds off competition and accountability. And if you think about how this could play out late in games, in tight situations, it becomes even more compelling. Having multiple reliable tight ends gives the quarterback options in high-pressure moments. It creates mismatches against linebackers and safeties. It allows for quicker reads and safer throws. Those are the kinds of details that can decide games in the fourth quarter. So while this move might not have come with massive headlines, it has the potential to influence the offense in ways that go far beyond the stat sheet. It's about flexibility, depth, and giving the coaching staff more control over how they want to attack each opponent. At the end of the day, that's what this is really